August, typically a quiet time for many of us. It's vacation time for a lot of us, the waning days of summer, but that is not the case weather-wise here. We have had drought. We have had record warm ocean temperatures, really chilly water temperatures, and some really hot air as well. We're going to talk about all of that in our Something in the Air podcast as we recap the month of August with New Jersey State Climatologist, Dr. Dave Robinson. Fall is almost in the air here. We can see the days getting shorter, the heat just not as extreme here, and we have to recap the month of August here. It is our August Weather Roundup brought to you by the Press of Atlantic City in conjunction with Stockton University. And join with us as we do at the beginning of every month, New Jersey State Climatologist Dr. Dave Robinson, who's at Rutgers University. It is here. The semester begins again.
Every year, come September.
But did I make you speechless? Was that speechless?
Well, I just think how many years I've had the first, the fall semester has begun here at Rutgers. This is number 34 for me.
Just slightly longer than I've been alive.
Yeah. Let me see. I've been state climatologist 31 years.
Right. That was the same year. I think we talked about this because I was May 91. So when were you state climatologist?
September 1st, 1991.
Wow. So I've really only known one state climatologist, essentially, since I can remember things.
Yeah, and how many presidents have you had and governors during that time?
A lot. It just shows the staying power of Dave Robinson. It's been a good run, and we're still going. And we're on year 4 of this podcast. So we just need you to be state climatologist for like another 27 years, and then we can get 31 years of this podcast.
No.
You got staying power. All right. So August, I think was actually pretty busy. It's not like there were a lot of storms. There was the lack thereof, and we'll talk about that. But there was actually a lot to talk about here. So here's the rundown for today's show. We'll go in order here. We're starting off with the wild swings in water temps. Then we're going to talk about drought. Then we'll talk about what happened on August 22nd. We had a lot of rain in a small area. Then we're going to talk about August temperatures, and then we're going to talk about what the heck happened to hurricane season. So let's start off with the water temps because that is, no pun intended, hot in the streets right now. I went to Italy and Malta in August. I left on August the 8th. Water temperatures were just recovering out of the upper 50s at that point. I come back, we're in the upper 70s, and then we do break a preliminary all-time temperature record at Atlantic City at the Steel Pier when we got up to 84.2 degrees. Records go back to 1911. And then Sea Isle City also broke a record on August 30th. Granted, that period of record's not that long. I think it only goes back to about the year 2000. But they got up to just a little bit over 84.7 degrees here. Now, I should say, at the time of recording, the National Ocean Service is looking into that water sensor at the Steel Pier to make sure it was all good. However, the National Weather Service has told me it is safe to say it is a preliminary record. So with all of that, I'm just going to turn it over to you, and I'll let it fly here in terms of these water temps and the real swing we saw this month.
Yeah, I mean, it's not my area, especially by any means, but it is really quite remarkable. And as we've talked about last month, with the colder surf temperatures, it has to do with wind direction. But there's a little bit more to it to get to a record high temperature. And you've got to have warm air sitting over that water, helping to warm it up. You have to have fewer clouds in the sky over the course of the summer season for that solar radiation to heat up the water. So it's a combination of a couple of things. And while we remained very warm in August, the wind direction clearly wasn't one that came directly from the south and helped to pull the water off the coast and lead to the upwelling of cold water underneath. This time, the wind was still more from a southwesterly direction, something from the south, but it wasn't enough to push the water offshore. Instead, it allowed that cap, that warmer surface cap, to remain in place. And with that, wow, the temperatures really skyrocketed. I think there's also another factor here. And this one was, there was a period while you were away in the middle of the month where we had very warm daytime temperatures, but it was quite comfortable at night. The humidities had really lowered. And that was a function of some northwesterly winds coming in, which helped keep the lid, if you will, on the water and heat it up. So I haven't looked at it in great detail, but clearly a wind direction shift from the previous month, the addition of near record or record warm temperatures, and with these drought conditions we're experiencing throughout the region for the most part, fewer clouds and more sun. So a really interesting study, and what a contrast.
Yeah.
What we saw in July and late August.
Could this be a top 10 weather event of 2022 for you?
It might crawl in a 10 or something.
Okay, all right. Just wondering, because I already got this circled on mine.
I haven't seen the other numbers up the coast. Remember, you're focused there on.
Yes, that is true.
And I know I was in the surf up in the Seaside Heights a couple days before that record, and it was nowhere near 84 degrees in that water, but it was comfortable. But this was not. And remember, we've talked before about the orientation of the coast is more north-south when you're in the northern part of the state, and it's more northeast to southwest in the southern part of the state. So you can have big differences with just slight differences in wind directions. So haven't been able to look at the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, generally, we've been in the upper 70s in much of, I'll say, from Seaside on south. But just 2 points about that record. After the National Ocean Service kind of flagged the sensor, it actually did crawl up even to 84.7. So they could confirm that record as high as 84.7. Secondly, you brought up northwest winds. My other weather dad, Jim Eberwine, who is a friend of the show, friend of both of ours, actually thinks that northwest wind could have pushed some of that very warm bay water around to the Steel Pier, which could have actually slightly increased temperatures as well. That was something that he was speculating about during this time too, given how warm the bays have been over the month of August. I don't know if you want to chime in on that, but that was just my last points on that.
That's a wonderful thought. Now the sensor on AC is at Steel Pier.
Yes.
Correct? So it's got to go down, what, about a mile from?
Not even. I mean, from the inlet, like a half mile.
Yeah. No, that's a brilliant thought. That's quite possible that it was fed a little bit by that the warmer bay water.
Yeah. So time will tell. Hopefully by the time you guys are all listening to this, I'll have an update on our website about the water temps. But enough about the water. Let's talk about the lack of. Oh, God. Yeah.
One more thing on that. Even if it was the case, it's 100 years of record and it still broke it. So it shows you how unusual this was. It may have been fed by bay water in the past. I can't imagine this would have been the first time in a century.
Sure.
Yet there's never warm enough water coming out of the bay to add to the temperatures along the shore. So I don't want the listeners to think that, oh, this is a one-off. The warm water came out of the back bays and it warmed things up. It would have had opportunities on numerous occasions over the last century to do so, and it still didn't push it up to that temperature.
No, you're right, and great point on that. So that was a good thought as well. Let's talk about the lack of water here. I think that is probably the bigger story, honestly, statewide, and that is drought. You are the lead. If I don't want to put you in a bad spot, but I think the lead on determining where in New Jersey we are in drought. Correct?
Yeah, we're in consultation each week with folks from NJDEP, the National Weather Service, Matt Gerbish in my office,
Sure.
sometimes East Regional Climate Center, but I'm the one that basically puts out my thoughts, throws it out to them for feedback, and they provide some valuable feedback, and then that goes out, the product goes out to the mapper of the week for the National Drought Monitor. And there we are on the national scene.
Yeah. So we did, well, in South Jersey, we re-entered drought. If you remember, we were in drought from March 8th to April 12th. We are back in a moderate drought, which is really the lowest level of drought. We talked about it on this show before. There's no slight drought. Moderate drought is the lowest level, but we're still in drought. 6.2 million people statewide are in drought right now. And the most severe part of it, which actually is called severe drought, is not in South Jersey, but up in Union and Hudson and Middlesex, part of Somerset County as well. But we have been dry, and this kind of correlates into rainfall. We haven't really seen a widespread rain across the area. In fact, the 30th into the 31st was kind of widespread, but it wasn't even everywhere, but at least a number of places picked up some rain. Typically, and then I'll turn it over to you, this time of year, late August, let's say until early October, your widespread range primarily comes from remnant tropical systems. And as we're going to talk about later in the show, there hasn't been any tropical systems to talk about here. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to you in regards to the drought we're having.
Yeah, it is dry. The only parts of the state that really are escaping any kind of categorization now, be it abnormally dry or in some level of drought, is a little bit of Salem and western Gloucester County, where they've been hit by these hit or miss showers, up to the level of almost being normal precipitation. And then thanks to that very heavy rain earlier in the month on LBI, kind of that area, Stafford Township over to Manahawkin and there a little bit, but the rest of the state. And it's really re-blossomed in South Jersey again, as you mentioned. If people remember, back in late March, we were getting a little concerned about things, particularly in southern New Jersey. And then we had a wet April and May, and things backed off. And then when things ramped up again, drought-wise, in July and August, it was first in the central part of the state. But now we're back in it in the southern part, where it was quite evident that rainfall the last 30, 60, not so much 90 days, but certainly 30, 60, 90 days was well below average, half of normal in many, many places or less. Stream flows are real low. The groundwater levels are low. And all of these are key indicators that we are real deficient in the rainfall department. Now, there are exceptions, and we can talk about what happened up a northern part of LBI. We can even talk about the Atlantic City Airport.
Yeah.
If you only had a station in South Jersey at Atlantic City Airport, you'd say, drought, what drought? Dry summer, what dry summer?
Yeah.
Because I looked at the numbers. The Atlantic City Airport this summer, June, July, and August, has had 11.81 inches of rain. That's only 0.71 below normal.
Not bad.
Let's go over to the marina. Atlantic City Marina has had 4.36 inches for the 3-month period, which is 6.65 inches below normal, 35–40% of normal, just in that short distance. And mind you, this isn't an inland versus coastal situation here. This is the spotty hit or miss rains that have mostly missed the regions of the state throughout the state this summer. But when you've gotten hit, they're small storms, but they can be awfully potent storms, which can lead to some localized flash flooding. So we can't ignore those. But overall, the state's in rough shape right now. Rainfall in August was a little bit better than July statewide. But when you look at the state as a whole, this would be the 19th driest August on record, roughly. We still have preliminary numbers. It might creep up to the low 20s. When you look at the summer, it's been the 6th driest summer, but we're still waiting on some data from the rains that came on the evening of the 30th. And they could bump it into 7th or 8th or 9th. They're not going to bump it out of the top 10. I'm already confident about that. So the 6th driest summer. And what's interesting about that statewide, it is the driest summer in New Jersey since 1966.
Wow.
Yeah, we've only in the top 20, you have 2010, but that falls like 14th or 15th. So this has been an unusually dry summer, June, July, and August. And it's mostly a function of July and August. So we've managed to stay out of a drought warning, or dare say even worse, a drought emergency at this point, based on evaluations by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection regarding water resources, primarily, not so much agricultural, soil moisture, fire danger, things like that. They look primarily at just how much water, fresh water, is going to be available to pump through the pipes to homes, to fire hydrants, to businesses, and so on. And so far, okay, but a very watchful eye by the folks at NJDEP.
Got it. And, we're tracking down on pressofac.com. We get the information from you. Real quick, because we have about a minute left here in this segment. Can we correlate the drought in March and April to this, or would you consider them two separate events for South Jersey, at least?
Yeah, I would consider them two separate events. Heck, we even had the driest November, December combined on record in late 2021. So they may be part of a generally drier pattern that transcends multiple seasons now. This would be the 3rd season of that: winter, early spring, and summer. But, we don't see cold sea surface temperatures, which was a major leading cause for the mid-60s drought when we had a series of dry summers. Sometimes you just roll the dice and it comes up on the dry side a little bit more often than the wet side. But overall, Jersey has gotten wetter in recent decades. Witness the fact that we haven't had a dry summer like this in ages. So no, it's very difficult to correlate those, but that's what leads to a real long-term serious situation when the winter rains fail, and then the summer rains fail, and then the tropical rains that can come in here fail. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they may not be correlated with one another, but you're coming up empty 3 in a row, and then you got yourself a serious drought.
Got it. On a positive note, our short summer weekend weather report card at the time of taping on pace for record good summer here. But those details will come out sometime around the 10th of September. I can't give it away just yet, but looking really good there. All right, we're going to wrap it up for this segment. When we come back, we're going to talk about temperatures in August, and we're going to talk about that hurricane season. You're listening to the Something in the Air podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to the Something in the Air podcast, brought to you by the Press of Atlantic City in conjunction with our friends at Stockton University, helping us out on the production side. New episodes, the 1st and 3rd Wednesdays of every month. And as we do it the 1st Wednesday of every month, we are here with New Jersey State Climatologist Dr. Dave Robinson. It has been a loaded first half of the show, and we're going to keep the good times rolling as we go into the second half here. Let's talk about August 22nd real quick. Harvey Cedars, Surf City, Stafford Township, and pretty much just those areas saw a lot of rain. In fact, Harvey Cedars saw 2.16 inches of rain in either 10 or 15 minutes that morning. We talked about this. It had a less than 0.1% chance of that happening in any given year at Harvey Cedars. So here's my question. One, just your reaction to this, but then two, just a little bit quickly philosophically, oftentimes this might be shown as a 1 in 1,000 year event. I want to know your thoughts on talking about storms that way. So two-part question for you.
Yeah, no, it's what we've seen in multiple occasions this summer where a very isolated storm stalls over an area and it produces copious amounts of rain in a short period of time. We've seen it up in Lakewood. We saw it here. We've seen it a few other places. Just a week ago, Monday, we saw it up in a 5-inch total in Bedminster in northern Somerset County. Meanwhile, just miles away, little to no rain falls from these events. There's nothing exceptional about that we haven't seen in the past, but this summer they just really stood out because there were really so few of them covering so little area. But when you can get that moisture funneling into a system, acts like a chimney, raising that moisture and then just squeezing it out, and that storm stalls, then you can really have local trouble real quickly. So, and going on to the 1 in 1,000 year event, you've heard about this all month long from what's going on in Kentucky and St. Louis and Dallas, and that's just in the US. We've seen other cases overseas in numerous locations. This is a tough one. Obviously, we don't have 1,000 years of record. So we have to use statistical means based on 50 and 100 years of observations to project out how unusual a storm of a certain magnitude would be over a certain period of time. So there's a lot of statistics in here. But something that's also struck me is that these were based on 30 stations around New Jersey maximum over the last 100 years that have been around. Some have shifted and what have you. But now with Rutgers Weather Network and with the CoCoRaHS program, we have 10 times that. We have 300 stations. We would have not known about this storm, except their radar estimates and all, without having a CoCoRaHS observer there, without having our weather network station down in Harvey Cedars, which had all of that rain, and so on and so forth. So I think what we're seeing is these 1,000 year events aren't 1,000 years or have a return period of once, every 100 years, or a 1% chance of occurring, as you put it, for a point.
Point one. Yeah.
But still, let's cut to the chase. These are excessive, unusual events, whether it's 1% chance, 2% chance, or whatever. They are rare for a given location.
Got it. Switching over from the rain, let's talk about the heat. And you have some breaking news for us on August temperatures.
It looks like preliminary numbers suggest that August of 2022 is going to be the warmest August on record in New Jersey. It's close to 2010 right now, within 1/10 of a degree. So it's going to end up first, second, probably not even third. It's just a function of really, and we've talked about this in the past, and we can visit another time. Daytime highs have been pretty excessive because it's dry. We're baking that ground with the sun, with fewer clouds, and you're getting hotter days. But in the middle of the month, we had drier air, and that allowed cooler nights. So the lows didn't dominate the warmth this month, although they were above normal.
Sure.
But the highs did. And this is, preliminary numbers shows this summer is going to come out as the third warmest summer on record in New Jersey. Only 2010 and 2020 beat it. And you want some numbers of the 10 warmest summers in the last 127 years, all of them have occurred since 1999, and 7 of them have occurred since 2010. And since 2016, which is 7 summers, 6 of the last 7 summers have ranked in the top 10 for warmth. Mine going back 127 years.
Yeah. Incredible warmth. And it shows, how our, state has warmed over the past couple of decades as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no denying that. We had 1991 to 2020 as or I should say 1999 1991 to 2020 is our new climate average. And when you compare that to the previous 1981 to 2010 climate average, these new averages are higher. So this all has to do with that. And as we go into the 2001 to 2030 update, probably going to be higher as well. I did just want to point out, we did have a heat wave from August 2nd to the 9th at ACY. That was an 8-day heat wave. That was the 18th time we had an 8-day heat wave. We also had an 8-day heat wave in July, and that's at least 3 or more days of 90-degree or greater heat. Interestingly enough, and numbers can always be, this is a good case, and sometimes numbers can be smudged around a little bit, but Millville actually had 2 heat waves in that 8-day period because one of those 8 days was 89 degrees. So there you go. But we actually set some record highs. Oh, good.
Well, that's why I don't like counting the number of heat waves. I like counting the number of days over 90 or over 95 because of the fact that you string together a heat wave of 8 days, it's one heat day. A heat wave of 3 days is one heat wave.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I mean, and you were pointing this out, ACY had 12 days in August at or above 90. The record was 14. So we were pretty close to that. And other places in the state actually had new records. I believe New Brunswick and Newark for most 90-degree days. Real quick, just want to point out some record highs we broke. Millville on August 9th, 97 degrees. We also broke record warm minimum temperatures in Millville on the 7th and 9th. ACY broke record maximum low temperature on the 9th with 78 degrees. All right, we're going to wrap up with hurricane season or the lack thereof. We got about 2 minutes left at the time of recording, and this is August 31st. We have had only 3 named systems, and for the first time since the 1940s, we went from July 3rd to August 31st without a named system. Welcome news for sure, but historical news as well.
Yeah, and I'm not so sure how welcome it is. As long as the storm behaves itself, because look at Henri last August, it soaked the state, which was terrific.
Understood.
It was followed by Ida, but we could use a tropical soaking, but it has to be a well-behaved storm.
Yeah, well-behaved storm. I should have put asterisks on that. I was thinking more broadly.
Yeah, that's not so easy to get. No, but it's been an unusually low year when they expected a more active year. But the year's not over. The bulk of the storms come in September and October. Yep. But we've had a variety of conditions in the tropical Atlantic that have inhibited storm formation. Warm, dusty air coming off Africa, higher pressure over the Atlantic, even some cooler than normal sea surface temperatures out in the eastern tropical Atlantic. So everything was conspiring against storm development. But all of those conditions as of late August have begun to back off, which can open the door for storms to start percolating out there in the tropics over the next couple of weeks. So keep an eye out. 1999 was one of the driest summers on record. And on September 16th, along came Floyd. Say no more.
Yeah, and Floyd's one of those storms I remember forever. So, like you said, don't let your guard down, but we have been quiet so far. All right, we're going to wrap it up here for this episode of the Something in the Air podcast. If you want to check out the New Jersey Mesonet, the Rutgers New Jersey Weather Network, that's njweather.org. You can also go to njclimate.org njclimate.org for the latest climate information in the state. We'll be back with you the 3rd Wednesday of September, guest to be determined, but Dr. Robinson will be back with us in early October. I don't want it to be October in a month, but we have to be. So that's it. We'll talk to you guys soon. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. And thank you for listening to the Something in the Air podcast.